And I'm never going to do anything to hurt our farmers.
I never thought I was going to lose this much money, this fast.
In Illinois, a farmer has just dumped dozens of tons of corn into a landfill because no one will buy it. At the Port of New Orleans, more than 180 ships carrying American corn lie idle endlessly waiting for a delivery order that will never come. Corn prices have plummeted by 40%. Ethanol plants have shut down. Farmers, once the backbone of America, are now selling tractors applying for medical assistance or driving Uber just to survive day by day. Meanwhile, in Manitoba, Canada, fireworks are going off at the agricultural cooperative. In just 3 months, they secured more than $3 billion in corn export contracts with Japan, South Korea, and Europe. Why are American corn farmers going hungry while Canadian corn farmers are becoming millionaires? And the most painful question after corn, will it be soybeans, beef milk, or will the entire American agricultural sector collapse like a chain of dominoes? If you once lived off the land or simply believed it was something you would always protect, this is a story you cannot ignore. From a world-prized commodity to rejected orders, a slap in the face of American agricultural pride. In mid-July 2025, a piece of news that seemed unbelievable shook the Midwest. 272,000 tons of American corn had its export contracts canceled within just 24 hours. Not because of natural disasters, not because of war, but for a reason America had never dared to imagine. American corn no longer meets global standards. Once regarded as a symbol of American agricultural strength, corn is now being turned away from Asian and European ports. Mexico, Japan, South Korea, and many EU countries simultaneously issued a clear message they no longer want shipments containing high chemical residues lacking traceability, and especially using genetically modified strains without transparency in the process. Millions of tons of American corn are sitting idle at the Port of New Orleans, exposed to sun and rain with no one coming to claim them. People in corn-growing states don't need the media to know what's happening. They see it firsthand: trucks turning back because silos are full contracts for the next harvest being canceled, corn prices sliding equipment being sold off, and in many processing plants, work shifts being cut by the hour. When corn doesn't leave the port, ethanol production lines stop, workers lose jobs, and towns lose their vitality. A single commodity breaks, but it drags down an entire community. Some say this is the consequence of the newly reinstated tariffs at the beginning of the year on steel, aluminum, and energy, with a host of allied nations. Partner countries may be retaliating through silence, and corn is among the first targets. But for many industry experts, the answer is even harsher. American corn is being pushed out because it no longer meets the new standards. The world today no longer demands just abundant food, but clean, traceable, and produced within a low-carbon chain. While competitors like Canada have invested in blockchain systems and digital inspections, America remains stuck in paperwork, sporadic checks, and near-zero transparency. Adding on rising logistics costs and inflated inspection fees, American corn is losing not just in quality, but from the moment it leaves the farm. Not only has China drastically cut imports down 90% in 3 years, but traditionally loyal markets like Japan, South Korea, and Europe are also signing contracts with alternative suppliers. Domestic inventories are climbing to their highest level in 6 years. Farmers are holding on to unsold goods. Input costs are skyrocketing, while subsidies arrive late or lack the strength to rescue. In many rural communities, people are no longer discussing what to plant next season, but rather, should we even bother planting at all this year? The deepest pain isn't the lost contracts, it's the loss of faith. Corn was once a source of pride, the raw gold of the American plains. Now it is labeled outdated, obsolete, and no longer fit. And ironically, this collapse didn't come from the outside, but from America's failure to prepare in time for the new game. Meanwhile, just a few hundred miles across the border, another country is securing billion-dollar contracts with what America once dismissed. Their silence now speaks volumes through their revenues. And the question is, if Canada can do it, why can't we? The quiet neighbor has now stolen the corn throne with premium grain. While American corn piles up at the Port of New Orleans exposed to rain because no country wants it across the border, Canadians are celebrating an unprecedented milestone. billion-dollar corn export contracts have just been signed with Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. Same corn, same timing, but the outcomes are entirely opposite. America is rejected. Canada is chosen. Why? Because the world has changed. And Canada changed with it while America did not. Canada didn't wait until a crisis to react. In recent years, they proactively banned numerous pesticides still used in America: atrazine, glyphosate, chlorpyrifos, names already blacklisted by European and Asian markets as unacceptable. They built a blockchain-based traceability system, integrated low-carbon standards right from the farming stage. They didn't talk much, they acted to earn trust. and the world is responding very clearly through contracts. According to the latest statistics, Canada is preparing to export more than 2.7 billion bushels of corn in the 2025 crop year, near its highest level in 25 years. Japan, once heavily reliant on American corn, shifted nearly 20% of its orders to Canada in just the first half of the year. American corn prices fell. Canadian corn sells at a premium, not because they have better varieties, but because they meet the standards the world now requires. We once believed America was the center, and for decades that was true. Importing nations revolved around America like planets around the sun. In that order, Canada was just a small satellite relying on the American market, learning from American standards, surviving on exports to America. But 2025 has shown that orbit has shifted, and Canada is the first to break free. Now they themselves have become the example. Other nations no longer look to America to learn adaptation, they look north. And when the world follows a new model, the global orbit changes direction. Bit by bit, what America once led is now gradually moving elsewhere. Not because America is weak, but because it refused to change in time. And if you think this only affects corn farmers, think again. When major markets abandon, American corn prices drop, ethanol plants slow down, warehouses lack orders. Your children lose work hours. Food prices rise. Local stores begin cutting inventory orders. You don't need to be in Nebraska to feel the impact. Just look at the bills in your wallet. The most painful truth is this: America has removed itself from the center orbit. While competitors adapt to survive, America clings to old standards, old processes, and now suffers new consequences. Corn is just the first step. If tariff policies persist, if benefits are cut, if agriculture remains passive, the ones to suffer will be farmers' workers and the families who once lived proudly off an industry that once made America great. When American corn is rejected, no one bears more consequences than the American people. In the middle of this summer, many food banks in the western United States began putting up signs saying no more supplies available. Not because there were more people coming for food, but because federal support for them had been significantly reduced. In some places, there wasn't even enough instant noodles to distribute. This is no longer a strange story for the millions who rely on food assistance SNAP in rural and industrial suburban areas. Amid soaring prices and a volatile agricultural market, people expect a safety net. But what they are getting instead is a series of changes that puts even those who were previously eligible for SNAP or Medicaid at risk of being removed from the system. Starting in 2025, many states will implement stricter work requirements. If you don't work at least 20 hours a week, you won't receive support. What's notable is that the majority of those affected are over 50, have been unemployed long-term, or live in areas where suitable jobs for their age or health no longer exist. It's not only consumers who are under pressure. Farmers, those who grow corn, raise dairy cows, work in the fields from dawn, are also feeling the squeeze from both sides, a harsher international market, while domestic support slips further out of reach. Many agricultural subsidies are now reserved for large corporations with qualifying financial records, the capacity to invest in advanced technology, or ties to strategic priority associations. Independent growers who make up the majority in the Midwest no longer qualify for aid after their export contracts were canceled. This situation creates a strange, vicious cycle. Corn prices fall due to oversupply, farmers suffer heavy losses, and lack the capital for the next season. Meanwhile, SNAP recipients, once a stable outlet for local food, are shrinking in number. The severed link between producers and consumers is causing many regions once sustained by agriculture and manual labor to fall into a state of silent contraction. Fewer orders, less support, less hope. There's a paradox that more people are beginning to notice. While tax breaks for large corporations remain intact, budgets for vulnerable groups are steadily being cut, both officially and in practice. No one explicitly says the poor no longer matter, but when benefit conditions are raised so high that many can no longer reach them, the result is no different from being excluded outright. American agriculture is falling apart piece by piece. Typically, summer in the Midwest is when the fields are busiest. Harvesters rumble through the crops, trucks line up to deliver corn to ethanol plants, then to cattle and pig farms. But in 2025, that scene has become desolate, not because of crop failure, but because the market is gone. Since American corn shipments were rejected at international ports, corn prices have plummeted. Ethanol plants, once reliable buyers, have been forced to cut hours. Some places like Nebraska and South Dakota have shut down entire operations because they can no longer sell to international markets. More than 25 plants across the Midwest have either ceased operations or shifted to long-term maintenance, according to internal data from the Renewable Fuels Association. This has led to a familiar but now more severe consequence. Domestic corn purchasing prices have dropped below break, even leaving farmers with no incentive to maintain their main crop. But switching to soybeans or wheat is no easy escape. Over the past 6 months, as corn acreage surged, soybean acreage decreased. But as herds of cattle and pigs also shrank due to a lack of demand for meat and rising feed costs, soybeans, a staple in livestock feed, have also fallen into surplus. The market spiral has left all three key crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, simultaneously without reliable outlets. Looking deeper, dairy, cheese, beef industries seemingly unrelated to steel or trade are quietly taking hits. Dairy farms are forced to downsize, not because of disease, but due to rising feed costs, declining export orders, and new international standards requiring low-carbon milk, something America is not yet ready to supply. Meanwhile, Canada and Australia are seizing the opportunity to push their green protein strategies, which are welcomed by European and Japanese markets. In Wisconsin, once proudly known as America's cheese capital, small processing plants are beginning to close. Without a stable milk supply, unable to invest in new technologies, and unable to compete with imported products from countries ahead in traceability and low-emission certifications, these plants cannot survive. All this points to a clear reality. Whenever corn collapses, it's not just ethanol or livestock that gets dragged down. The entire structure of American agriculture, tightly interconnected through each link, begins to shake. And unlike previous crises, this time there is no lone savior strong enough to hold it all together. Rural credit banks are more cautious in offering pre-season loans. Crop insurance services are disrupted due to unstable budgets. Rural schools cannot hire enough teachers, and local hospitals warn of funding shortages to maintain emergency services. These rural communities, already fragile, are slowly slipping into exhaustion. Americans once believed agriculture was the sector most capable of self-recovery. But when fractures start with a corn kernel and spread through every link, dairy, meat, soybeans, to bank schools, the question is no longer just who suffers, but how much longer this system can endure without real change. A nation that once fed the world with its agricultural products is now struggling to hold on to its own production network, and the silence during this year's harvest may be a harbinger of an even colder future. Lessons from history and the future. In the 1980s, thousands of farms in America were foreclosed. Interest rates skyrocketed, debts ballooned, and families who lived by their land had to leave the very places where they had built their American dreams. Many have not forgotten. They don't need to reread history books because their parents' grandparents had lost everything after just one failed season. But what's worrying is not history repeating itself exactly, but that it could return in another form, quieter, but no less brutal. Not due to blizzards or droughts, but from the signatures in Washington, from a canceled order in Japan, from a few traceability regulations America has yet to adapt to. These may seem minor, but if not recognized early, they could lead to fractures with consequences far beyond a single agricultural sector. The story of American corn being rejected is not just a trade incident. It's a warning about trust from international partners, from consumers, and from American citizens who are beginning to ask, why are we no longer chosen? If the current trend continues as major markets like the EU, Japan, and South Korea shift toward blockchain-traced, low-carbon, non-GMO agricultural products, then America, with its outdated processes and the mindset of once number one, may continue losing ground. Not just corn, but soybeans, beef dairy, and ethanol, the very products that built America's export reputation, all risk slipping from negotiation tables. Meanwhile, Canada is becoming a clear example of how a nation can adapt and rise. Once considered a satellite in the solar system centered on America, now it is the first place major markets place their trust. Not because it is stronger, but because it chose to move ahead, raising standards proactively, reforming, investing in transparency and technology, rather than relying on tariff pressure. We cannot ignore that part of the world is shifting its orbit. Trade partners no longer revolve solely around America as the axis. They seek out more flexible, responsive nations that listen to the market. In this new order, if America does not reposition itself, its former place cannot be maintained by reputation alone. This is not the conclusion to a sad story. This is the starting point of an important question. Will we choose to adapt or continue to believe the world will forever play by the old rules where America leads, simply because it once did? A shipment of corn being rejected may seem like just another news headline, but for many Americans, it's an alarm bell signaling something far greater breaking down. From the Midwest to small border towns, people are witnessing a quiet change. America is no longer the first choice, and those who once created value for the nation are now the first to be cast aside. The question is no longer why are we being rejected, but if we don't change, what else will be taken away? What do you think can America regain its position if it continues down this path? Or is it time for a new mindset to listen more and take more substantial action? The analysis in this video is based on current data and independent perspectives, not intended to make absolute predictions or cause confusion. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next content.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.